Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my BookTube channel, A Reader's Almanac. And today I am really excited to chat with you about one of my favorite summer events, and that is Summerween. For those of you who don't know, Summerween is a celebration held every July, and it's meant to celebrate all of the spooky, creepy, wonderful vibes of Halloween, but in the middle of summer. And I've always enjoyed the idea of autumnal vibes, haunted houses, dry leaves underfoot, ghosts, and all things Gothic in the middle of summer. I enjoy it all year round, truthfully, but there's something about the dry heat of high summer and the idea of like a haunted house in the middle of a clearing in an old woods, and it's hot. And even though it's summertime and everything is supposed to be in the middle of its height of life, to have like a haunted house in a clearing or in a grove, and it's just dark and creepy and Gothic, and there's dust underfoot and squeaky floorboards, and that smell of summer experienced in the middle of like your grandmother's old attic or something like that, that I just find really intriguing, and it just spurs on the imagination. So I'm so glad that Summerween is a thing, and the actual BookTube celebration of Summerween is led, I believe, by Gabby of Gabby Reads. And she and her friends have all kinds of prompts that you can do, like read a book in the dark, a scary book in the dark, or, another year it was like read something with a haunted house on the cover or a sky on the cover. So I'm not doing the prompts per se. I may inadvertently be doing them without knowing it, but I'm not purposely following the Summerween prompts. Instead, I am just reading spooky books that run the spectrum from, just mildly ghostly and creepy all the way to full-blown horror. So, I'm going to be discussing what I've read so far, and then what I am reading now, and then what I still plan to read throughout this week. And Summerween runs all week long. It started on Saturday, July 5th, and it runs through the entire following week. So really exciting. Love this celebration and can't wait to share with you the books I've read. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So the first book that I would like to share with you that I've read for Summerween 2025 is Garlic and the Vampire, and that is by Bree Paulsen. This is a graphic novel. It's meant for a younger audience, middle grade maybe, or even younger than that. And it's a very sweet, very simple story of a garlic bulb named Garlic. And she lives in a village of vegetable folk, and they seem to be kind of led by a witch. And everyone gets along very well there. Garlic does have a very anxious, worrisome character. She frets a lot, and but the witch treats her very gently and very patiently. And one day, someone notices that on the edge of town in a creepy old castle, someone has moved in, and they think it's a vampire. And Garlic is chosen to go and talk to this vampire, to go to the castle, to confront him and see if he's up to no good, and if so, warn him that he should go away because he's not welcome in the vegetable town. Garlic does end up going despite her anxiety. She summons her courage and ends up going to visit the vampire and finds something very unexpected. And It's just a delightful, charming story, and I'll say the graphics are certainly wonderful. I love very much the color palette that Bree Paulsen chooses. It's all like shades of mushroom and loden and mustard and moss. It's a very sort of goldy green autumnal palette, and it has kind of a vintage tone to it. And so I think graphically it's lovely. I will say that I felt the actual speech and the speech bubbles and the comic panes were a little bit too simplistic and in some senses too modern. I'm personally, and this is just me, not a huge fan of folk characters, you know, like witches and vampires and so forth, that speak in a very modern, colloquial way. So like throughout the conversation, some of the characters say gonna and wanna and, you know, oh boy, and things like that that are just very modern sounding, contemporary to me. And I didn't personally feel like that perfectly jived with the beautiful kind of sepia cast illustrations throughout. Even though visually it's really cute, very pretty, I just wasn't a fan of how the characters spoke to each other. It just seemed too contemporary. I like a more traditional fable approach and something like that that involves, you know, witches and things like that. I don't know, I just don't, I see little folkloric villages like that as being kind of out of time, and therefore I expect a more classic way of speaking. I don't know if I'm making sense, but anyway, that was my impression. But it was so cute, so charming, and I'm sure little kids would absolutely love this. So yeah, Garlic and the Vampire. The next book that I'd like to share with you that I read for Summerween was The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. This was illustrated by Joseph Mugnani. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it came out in 1972. And this is about a group of 8 boys who go trick-or-treating on Halloween, only to discover that a 9th friend, Pipkin, has been whisked away by a character called Moundshroud on a journey that could determine whether he lives or dies. So on the back, I'll just read you the little summary here. On Halloween night, 8 trick-or-treaters gather at the haunted house by the edge of town, ready for adventure. But when something whisks their friend Pip away, only one man can help the boys find him. Join the sinister carapace clavicle Moundshroud as he takes them on an unforgettable journey through space and time, deep into the mysteries of the spookiest of nights. Can the boys save Pip before it's too late? And what will be the price of saving their friend Pip? So the illustrations in this are really wonderful. I think they're just gorgeous. I will say, however, that I was a little let down by this. It's definitely a children's middle grade, and it's fun. You know, Ray Bradbury is an incredible writer. I love his science fiction. But I just found this to be not quite a 5-star read. At times, Bradbury's prose, which is so lush and wonderful in things like Dandelion Wine and others, in this particular book, he has this sort of sense of eagerness in trying to convey like every single thing he's ever heard or every single thing he knows about the origins of Halloween and the dead and history. And it feels like he's starting to ramble or chant in a kind of crazy, incoherent, sped up way. That narrative style I personally found a little bit confusing. I started to lose the thread of the story. And as well, I have issues with the lack of female representation in this. All of the characters are male, all of the boys are male, and that part is fine. Don't get me wrong. If you want to write a book about 5 boys who are friends that go out on Halloween together, more power to you. That's fine. This was made into a movie, and I had read an anecdote about how when they made it into a movie, they were asking Ray Bradbury, we should have a girl in the story too, for just some kind of female representation. You're the father of 2 girls. Wouldn't it be nice to have some female in the story? And he kind of flatly said no, because this is based on my memories of Halloween growing up, and all of my friends were male, and that's how I'm writing it. And that's fine. However, it's not just the group of boys who are male. Additionally, most of the historical figures and supernatural creatures are also male. And that's kind of where I mentally drew the line. Ray Bradbury is perfectly free to convey a group of boys experiencing the adventure, but if it's meant to depict the larger, broader history of Halloween, Days of the Dead, Samhain, etc., so many women throughout history obviously also participated in rituals, or conversely were executed or persecuted for practicing things like witchcraft. And the divine feminine has existed in all time, from prehistoric time to the female Egyptians, female deities, female Romans, female pagans, and particularly female Wiccans, all of which he sweepingly covers in this, and yet everyone seems to be male. So that seemed very strange to me. I guess maybe it's a product of being written in the mid-20th century, kind of male dominated. It was great that he was trying to teach kids that Halloween is not just, something in the Catholic Church surrounding All Hallows Eve, but the way he did it just did not come off working for me. The crazy prose coupled with the lack of representation of some women in all of time and history, I just thought was odd. And so this did not hit for me. It was not really a success. Love my Ray Bradbury, love his science fiction, but I think I will probably donate this to the local Goodwill and let some other child enjoy it. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite, but it was cute. It definitely did give creepy vibes of Halloween. I love the house, and I love the Halloween tree, and the character of Mountroud was interesting, but it just didn't all come together for me. So the next book that I read for Summerween was The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates. Last year for Summerween, I read my very first Darcy Coates novel, and that was The Haunting of Lee Harker. I absolutely loved it. It was such a riveting page turner. It was very, very scary, so trigger warning. It's got a lot of sort of gory graphic stuff in it, so be forewarned, and it's quite scary, but very good, very gripping. And I read it in the span of about 3 days because I just couldn't stop turning the pages, and I stayed up at night reading it. So I decided to follow it up this year with The Haunting of Blackwood House. Unfortunately, this was not a real hit for me either. The Haunting of Lee Harker has such heart to it. You love the main character in it. You love all of the characters, at least I did. And the atmosphere that she evokes is just so creepy. It's such a different kind of story, and I absolutely loved it. In fact, I would reread that one. However, that is considered to be one of Darcy Coates' best haunted house stories, and so unfortunately this one fell really short in comparison. So this is the story of Mara. Mara was raised in a spiritualist household, and she has a childhood with memories she remembers that are just like peppered with charlatans and mediums and, you know, crystal balls and palm reading and things going bump in the room and everyone linking hands and the table starts to rise and there's Ouija boards and all of that. Some of it is unexplained and could have been real, but other parts were pure vaudeville. And so Mara has sworn it all off. She has left that life. She is out on her own, and she has a really wonderful boyfriend named Neil. And she decides to buy a house. And so she and her boyfriend Neil start moving her things into this place called Blackwood House, which was available for a very, very low, surprise, price because no one else wants to buy it. It has a history of having actually a killer in the house, and people actually died in the house. And so nobody wants to buy it because it's got bad vibes. But Mara is super in love with the house. She believes in it. She is so excited to move there. It's her first place. She's striking out on her own and is super excited to be a homeowner and has decided she's going to fix it up and all of that. But the problem is that Mara is so sworn off of ghosts and seances and mediums and spiritual presences that when all of these haunting things start happening to Mara and Neil in the house, she just keeps swearing it off and refuses to believe in it. She has turned her back on anything remotely ghostly, and so even when things are like moving in front of her and creaking in the hallways and you know, she's hearing people moving around and voices and actually like literally seeing apparitions, she's still ready to make it something logical that's happening and is really just so unlikable as a character. She was such a brat. She's so mean to her very patient, wonderful boyfriend, Neil. Unfortunately, like, he sort of puts up with all of her, you know, her attitudes. The problem is that we as readers don't see what it is that Mara loves about this house. Like, anyone else would run from this house, but Mara believes in it so strongly and is so drawn to it. But the problem is we aren't given any explanation for that, and the writing doesn't really show us from Mara's point of view what she finds so wonderful about it. As readers, we're just seeing this run-down, dilapidated place where things are moving and there are bad spirits there. So we can't really understand what it is that she sees in it. And she keeps treating her boyfriend in such a horrible way. She's just like a brat. And she's not likable. And in the last 50 pages, I will say that it was kind of saved. The writing does change. Events happen, and another couple who are mediums come into the house and try to help expel the ghosts or the bad spirits that live there. That's where the story actually starts to get interesting, as Mara's defenses start crumbling and she does start giving things a chance and is willing to humor these spiritualists as they try to rid her house of ghosts, and she becomes a little bit nicer to Neil. But in my opinion, it happened so late in the book that it was too little too late. And yeah, I don't understand why Darcy Coates wrote her in quite such a stubborn way. I think actually I would maybe blame the editor. The editor of this book perhaps should have done their job a bit better and made Darcy write one more draft of this to fix it. Now, will I read another Darcy Coates haunted house book? Absolutely. They're kind of addictive. They're very fast reads. They're a bit pulpy, like pulp fiction. It's a bit sensational, or it's a bit like a Penny Dreadful. So yeah, I'm collecting these. I will absolutely read more. And I do have faith that there are better Darcy Coates books still out there. I have faith that any author who could write something as excellent as The Haunting of Lee Harker must have some other cool stories out there. But Blackwood House ain't one of them. This was like a 2.5-star read for me. I will give you a trigger warning once again that if you are very sensitive to gory horror, these books may not be for you. But if you enjoy a good pulpy scare, then you might enjoy this. But I wouldn't particularly start with this one because this is definitely not one of her best. Okay, so now on to what I'm currently reading for Summerween 2025. I decided to read a contemporary horror book. I was in the mood for something that has a haunted house in it because I was not satisfied with The Haunting of Blackwood House, so I wanted to give a different book with a haunted house in it a try. And so I have started reading Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This has definitely made its rounds on BookTube and is a favorite and a darling of many. It is a contemporary story, which I am sometimes skeptical of, but I've decided to give it a try, and so far I can say it has not disappointed. I'm not very far into it. I would say I'm about 95 pages in so far. And this is the story of a young woman in the 1950s. Her name is Noemi, and she lives in Mexico City. So this takes place down in Mexico. It takes place in sort of the fall, and she receives a letter of distress from her cousin Catalina, who lives in the countryside in a desolate area way outside of Mexico City. And so concerned for her cousin's well-being, Noemi is sent to go check things out. Catalina was recently married and lives in this desolate area in a mansion called High Place, which is up at the top of a mountain where there were silver mines. And the family that Catalina married into is very mysterious and strange. They're actually English, and they were the owners of the mine. And behind the house, there is a graveyard with strange symbols wrought in the iron of the gates around the cemetery. The house is very creepy. So far, it's been really good, and it hasn't been like terrifying. It's been very gothic. So so far it's what you see on the cover of the tin. It's in Mexico and it's gothic. To me, so far, in terms of atmosphere and story, it's almost like if you took an old 1950s, 1960s episode of Boris Karloff's thriller. Is it Chiller or Thriller? Or like Alfred Hitchcock, one of those old black and white episodes, or even something like Perry Mason, because the character of Noemi is very sophisticated. She's a sophisticated young debutante, and she wears, chic taffeta gowns and wraps and things like that, and it's set in the 1950s. So she kind of reminds me of like a smart young woman from one of the Mexican episodes of something like Perry Mason, or one of the episodes set in Mexico from like Thriller Theater or Alfred Hitchcock Presents. But it's like that kind of married with dark shadows, and it's very interesting. I just love the way Sylvia Moreno Garcia is describing the house. She describes the wallpaper. It's very kind of hallucinogenic. I remember one thing in particular is the image of someone carrying a candelabra because they don't have much electricity in this house. They save it for certain things. It doesn't light up the entire house because it's run on a generator because they're in such a remote location above the silver mines on the mountain. So they use candles and candelabras, of course. And so this is this description of a very grotesque candelabra with cherubs carved on it. You know, very vivid descriptions of her room with the strange wallpaper designs, and her bed, her four-poster bed with the cloth that covers the curtains that cover the whole thing. It reminds me very much of Dark Shadows if it were like in Mexico. So, so far it's not terrifying. It's very, very good. My understanding is that it does get scarier later on, but I'm really enjoying it so far, and I'll be looking forward to sharing my final thoughts on this when I'm done. That's probably all the time that I will have to read books. When I finish Mexican Gothic, that's probably going to take me most of this week to finish. However, if I do have time to read something else, I may try some short stories collections, and I have 3 that I would like to share with you here. Now, I did mention this one in another video recently, and this is a short story collection called Ghost Camera, also by Darcy Coates. I'm not giving up on Darcy. Ghost Camera, the title story, is actually a novella which is about 100 pages long, and then there are other short stories in here. I've heard that some of those short stories are quite good, so I may give 1 or more of those a try. And then I also did pick up this collection, which is an anthology of new black horror. It's called Out There Screaming, and it's edited by Jordan Peele. I love Jordan Peele from Get Out fame, and he's also done the new Twilight Zone. This has stories by people like Tananarive Due, Nalo Hopkinson, and N.K. Jemisin, so I am very excited to try to read some of this collection as well because I love Jordan Peele and I trust his judgment. And then finally, this is a book that I mentioned last fall around Halloween time, and it is Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction collection. I did read some of these stories last year and really, really enjoyed them, but I would like to try some more this year, and we have authors like Darcy Little Badger, Tommy Orange, and Wabgisha Rice. So I may read a few more stories from here, which offer dark, creepy stories from a kind of folkloric, indigenous perspective. So yeah, that, and I love the cover of this one as well. That is everything for me for today. Are you participating in Summerween? I think you should. Do you have any spooky, creepy, Gothic suggestions for me? I would love if you would leave them in the comments down below because I'm always keeping a running list of all the scary stories, everything I want to get to. So I would appreciate more suggestions from you. I hope that you have enjoyed it and that you're having a good week, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.